Welcome to my latest video about making a fishing tackle box. My client wants a box made of wood for fishing tackle, kind of like the antique fishing tackle boxes, to be used as a retirement gift. So I've designed a box that uses cherry sides and walnut plywood for the top, bottom, and the two shelves, as you saw in the wireframe drawing that I posted. So I've gone ahead and cut the milled and cut the cherry for the sides. Nothing exciting there. And now I'm using the domino tenoning jig to put dominoes on the insides of the front and back, and I'm going to make a simple butt joint with the sides. And so I've got a total of 5 dominoes. One will be in the top, and it'll be hinged, and the other 4 will be in the bottom. And I think they're going to provide a strong grip. Now, bear in mind, these dominoes don't have a whole lot of glue surface on the the flat grain, but they do fit very tightly, very snugly in these holes. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have to put them in with a mallet. So they'll be tight enough with the glue in there, I think, to give us a good bond, and we won't have to do any dovetailing or anything like this. Also, the fact that I'm rabbiting the plywood into the top and bottom, that's going to give more glue surface to hold the box together, so I think we'll be just fine. So let's go ahead. I've got the 5mm bit in my domino jig. I've gone ahead and I've marked where the dominoes have to be, so now it's just time to cut. On my way up to the shop this morning, I stopped by my solar kiln. 2 days ago I put a charge of red oak in there, and boy, the smell is just great. It comes out the kiln, and wonderful. Okay, today what I'm doing is I'm getting ready to glue the box sides together. I'm just touching up the faces, the glue faces, with a low angle block plane, and I'm also putting just the slightest chamfer on the edges where these come together, so that we don't actually have a completely flush transition between the pieces, but to be just a little bit of an accent of a chamfered edge, which I think looks nice. You may wonder why I'm planing from both directions. It's because I don't want to cause any tear out on the faces, the edges there. So everything's smoothed up. Now it's time to do some assembly. I'm doing this assembly in 2 pairs, and then get those corners squared up, like I think you maybe can see in this shot here, and then I'll put these 2 L-shaped pieces together. Important thing is to keep the corners square. Okay, we're all clamped up nice and square. The way I check squares is on a diagonal. Take diagonal measurements, and if they're both the same, and they are, then you're square. Do that top and bottom. We'll go ahead and let the glue set and start working on the trays. And now I'm cutting the grooves for the various slats that are part of the shelves, or the trays to fit into. They're 1/8 inch deep by 1/4 inch wide. I'm just going to use my little router here. I got a guide board here to to put the router base against. And so I'm just going to go ahead and set this up on my first line, which I've already measured out, 1 3/4 inches from the edge of the bit. Tighten that up and go ahead and cut this. If I was doing a production run, I'd go ahead and use the ShopBot to make these cuts because I'd just do it over and over. But for a small job like this, it's easier just to set up the router. That makes one cut nice and easy. What I'm going to do is I'm cutting all these, then I'll go ahead and slice these into, or actually I'll go ahead and plane this down to 5/16 thickness, and then I'll slice this into 1.5 inch pieces, and I'll have enough for the 4 trays, front and backs. Okay, I've cut these side pieces to 1.5 inch thick. I got the grooves in them. I've gone ahead and marked matched pairs so everything lines up just perfectly. I've got my plywood here that I've cut to exact size. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue these fronts and backs on, let them set. Once they're all set, then I'll go ahead and glue the sides on. The sides will capture the fronts and backs. And these are butt joints, just butting the wood against the plywood, and that'll be fine for this application. And so let's get started. Use a couple of clamping cauls. Careful where these clamps contact the cauls. I want it to be low enough so I get good direct pressure straight through to the plywood. So in order to keep these sides perpendicular, I'm having to adjust the clamps around a little bit. That looks pretty good. So I can get the glue squeeze out of here and put a couple more clamps on. Okay, now I'm installing a couple of cleats on the inside of the box, and this is what the trays will rest on. So I've measured, I've used a marking gauge to make a line. Now I'm going to go ahead and mark the center of the holes. I've already countersunk the holes in the cleats themselves. And with that, then I can go ahead and drill the holes. Now, I'm using 1 inch brass screws, and they're going to extend about 1/2 inch through the cleat. So I don't want to go too deep on the drilling and drill right through the sides. So I'm just going to use a little blue tape, mark off 1/2 inch. Go ahead and put the tape on, and that'll be my marker. You can use those collars that clamp on. I find that they're quite a bit of trouble, so I don't really mess with them. The tape is just much faster and does the job. But whatever works. Okay, there I got 1/2 inch. Go in and carefully drill these pilot holes. Okay, now I'll go ahead and do the other side and glue those in place. Now I'm using brass screws for these cleats. Normally I use stainless steel screws in my furniture because stainless steel is stronger, and I've just had problems with brass screws occasionally just twisting off because brass is not very strong. But this fishing box, tackle box, has brass hardware, and I'm trying to make it, you know, kind of a little bit of a showpiece. I mean, I know it's a fishing tackle box, but I want it to look real nice, so having little brass screws on the inside will help. And so I have to lubricate the screws, and I'm using this stuff called Lloyd's Original Ackum Pucky, but soap works too. And make sure you do lubricate your brass screws, and make sure your pilot hole is at least as big as the shank where the threads are, you know, or you're going to tear the screw off. You know, that's real pretty. Now, gluing in the slats on the trays is pretty straightforward. I just made these little slats, got them all sanded nicely, and the idea is just to fit them into the grooves. I'm using some glue to hold them in because I figure, well, I don't really want them to not fall out, but you know, you're going to be picking up on those slats when you remove the tray, so they need to be in there pretty good. A little brush to get them on, get the glue on the inside of these slots. I'm getting ready to cut the rabbets in the sides for the top and bottom pieces. It's a 7/16 inch plywood that will be set into the rabbet and glued in place. I'm going to use a router bit. It's 1/2 inch tall with a bearing, pilot bearing that gives me a 3/8 inch total cut. I'll be using it in the router table, so the bit will be cutting like this. So the first thing I want to do is use my knife marking gauge to put a good score line around the inside where this bit's going to cut. That'll help with preventing any tear out right there on the surface. You know, I'll have to do this cut in several passes, but you know, I want to try to minimize any chance of tearing out the wood there on the surface. So we'll just go ahead and cut this deep cut. Okay, now I'm going to cut the rabbet that the top panels are going to fit into. I've got my bit set up. It's going to be a climb cut for at least the first pass, so that I can minimize the chip out. Okay, I've got the inside of the top and the bottom finished because obviously you have to have the inside finished. It's easier to do before you glue up. Now I've I've cut out the corners of the rabbet, and then I've taken a product called Waxy Lit from Lee Valley. It's a release agent. It helps the glue release because I'm going to get squeeze out. I'm doing basically blind gluing. I'm gluing both the top and the bottom at the same time. I've already got that bottom in. You can see some squeeze out there. It's going to happen because these tops and bottoms are part of the structural components. I need to have enough glue. So I've spread some Waxy Lit just off of where the glue is going to be. And when it squeezes out, later on when I cut the box open, I'll be able to come in and just peel off the glue. So I've carefully marked the fit of this. These are custom fit for each location. I've put the glue on. Now I just want to carefully fit these into place. Next I'll clamp the top and the bottom together, let it set, and we'll be good to go. Now that I've got the top and the bottom glued on, I'm going to very carefully cut the box apart using tape to help prevent any tear out. Cut something as big as a top off of a box, the cut's not going to be particularly clean. I got some burn marks here, so a little hand planing necessary to get the burn marks out. Make sure that the pieces fit together perfectly again. So now I'm cutting a little rabbet on the lid. A rabbet here on the lid, corresponding rabbet on the box, so that it'll hold the lid in place better. If it's a fishing tackle box, it's going to get knocked around a little bit. So if it gets knocked around a little bit, it won't it won't try to slide, bend the hinges and so forth. Also notice my glue is balled up, it's drying. I want to let it get very, very firm before I peel it off, but remember I put the waxy lid on the inside and I can feel its nice waxy surface. Once the glue is really firm, it'll peel right off. There you go, the top fits on there. All I have to do is clean it up to make it nice and smooth, rounded edges a little bit. But once it's hinged, it'll just open and close, and if a little wrap comes along like this, it's not going to want to go anywhere. Well, here we are, all done. We've got the latches, the handle, the corners, all brass. Real good set of hinges here, stop hinges, stop at 95 degrees or so. So you don't have to have any internal chains or anything. And then the two shelves Fit in there nicely. All set for a fishing trip. Thanks for tuning in.